Andrew, why now?
Hey, Eric, I think this is really an interesting time, and it's hard to figure out why now, but he has stuck his stake in the ground, Adam Silver has, and really broken off from his brethren commissioners here in putting forward a proposal for gambling. I think the why now relates to being proactive, getting ahead of the other commissioners, and wanting to say it's better in the light than in the shadows. He talks about regulations. We should make it federal. And we have a hearing coming up in New Jersey opposing betting, opposing sports betting. What he's saying is he's a clever lawyer. He's saying, on the one hand, we still oppose that, but if we had a federal comprehensive program, we wouldn't be dealing with these individual state problems that we have. I think he's getting ahead of it, and I think we can't ignore the monetization angle here as well. They just did a deal with FanDuel, a fantasy sports company, so that's part of this as well in terms of timing.
Hold on, so that's his incentive?
I think all these commissioners are trying to figure out what's the monetization angle here. How do we control it? How do we monetize this rather than somebody else doing it? And yes, the first deal out there is FanDuel and the NBA last week, and all of a sudden we go, wait a minute, wow, the NBA is taking control of the fantasy sports angle here, where other commissioners are sitting back and saying, how do we monetize this? Silver is stepping out and doing it first.
So this is just like Colorado legalizing marijuana. Everybody's doing it. Why don't we take charge of the process so we can track it and tax it, and everybody wins?
Absolutely. I think this is very comparable to what went on with legalized marijuana. He's saying it's better out in the light than in the shadows, and he talks about strict federal regulations. Oh, and with the New Jersey thing, he's almost saying, hey, federal government, we're going to keep opposing these state laws until you do something federal. It's really a challenge to Congress saying, let's legalize this. It's just interesting. Of all the things a new commissioner wants to stake his claim on, now this Donald Sterling thing was a reaction to those comments, but he has picked gambling, which really flies in the face of integrity in some ways.
So is the NBA going to be the new legal bookie?
I think that's what they want. They want
Really?
the country. They want the government to be the legal bookie. They want the government to control this area, just like we talk about with marijuana. They want the government to regulate this so they don't have the dark side coming to players, coming to referees, potentially compromising the integrity of the sport. I think that's what's going on here.
When you say, Andrew, that this flies in the face of integrity, what do you mean by that?
Well, in normal situations, gambling flies in the face of integrity. We go way back with Pete Rose, with the Black Sox scandal in 1920, with Tim Donaghy, a referee in the NBA who was accused of throwing games and fixing games. So when you talk about integrity, wow, gambling, that strikes at the heart of integrity.
Except for the fact that gambling happens, as Silver points out in his op-ed, and it's going to happen whether Congress legalizes it or not. And if players are going to throw games to make money with bookies, they're going to do it, aren't they, whether it's legal or not?
Well, Silver's saying, let's flip the page. Let's flip it. Let's make it legal. Therefore, they won't be susceptible to this. You referenced the key line, I thought, in your opening. There is an obvious appetite for safe and legal wagering in this country. He is looking at that and saying, let's make it obvious and safe, and let's make it legal.
All right.
Listen,
then Andrew,
what
is your opinion of his move?
Okay, I think this is coming. I think this is inevitable. I think there is no way that gambling stays under the surface besides Nevada. It's just too much of an appetite. The NFL has fantasy sports on NFL.com. That's gambling. The NHL has fantasy sports. Major League Baseball has fantasy sports. Now, we can say it's just fantasy, it's with your kids, but that's the tip of the iceberg. This is coming, so the leagues have to get ahead of it. So I commend Adam Silver for getting in front of it. The question is, how? How are we going to handle this huge appetite for gambling in a safe and legal manner? That's up to Congress. That's up to people beyond the NBA, but they're stepping out in front of it.
Clearly there are some obvious risks. What about the risks we haven't thought of, Andrew?
Well, the obvious risk is really players being paid off. I think that is, that sounds dramatic. I just don't see it happening, especially in team sports. To say that one player in football or basketball or baseball can control the outcome of a game, these are team sports. And the fact is, Eric, they make so much money. For them to risk that for whatever it's going to be. Now, again, if they're offered tens of millions of dollars, that's a different story. I just don't see that happening. I think the risk is integrity. The risk is that we as a public say, maybe that sport is not as clean as we thought. But again, Silver believes the other way is better. Having it legal is better than what we have now, which is illegal.
And it sounds like you agree with him.
I think it's coming. I think I guess I commend him for getting out in front of it. I'm not sure I agree with gambling and sports together, but eventually it's coming, whether we like it or not.